as I was saying, Joy Taylor, every dog has its day. And since I'm a big dog, I've got 2 days. Okay. So now.
You just called yourself a dog?
Yeah, I'm a dog. Yeah, I'm a big dog, a big one.
Kevin Durant is 6'11", who can pull up from 40. Okay. This brother is on that level. I'm talking about offensively.
Do you think you're better than Darrelle Revis is right now?
I'm better than you.
Welcome back to another episode of the Lowdown Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Mark Brown. As always, it is Monday, July 20th. It is approximately 12:30 p.m. Central Time, but for you East Coast people out there, it's 1:30, and I have a very special guest on the show. He's no ordinary guest. He's a writer for CBS Sports. His name is James Herbert, and he's an NBA writer, as a matter of fact. And the way that I discovered him is because I'm always on CBS Sports reading articles all the time, and I saw his name on there, and I thought about shooting my shot, and it looks like I hit a three-pointer, as a matter of fact. But just besides that, I also saw a tweet that he had that went viral a little bit over a week ago, and I saw it show up in my timeline, and it said, NBA gossip is now called bubble tea. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. So I saw that. I'm like, this guy seems like he's pretty funny, too. So I thought about, okay, maybe I should shoot him an email one of these days and see what happens. And here we are. And I have him on the show. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. And then starting off, we understand, and speaking of, I guess, the bubble tea, right? I guess it's going to be increased due to just yesterday we saw news. Everybody saw news on Twitter, especially for NBA fans near and far, about an NBA bubble barbershop actually in the works as we speak. So what do you, before we get into it, like, what are your thoughts of the the barbershop that's being constructed?
I mean, the barbershop that's open. Like, there was a tweet, or I don't know if it was Instagram or whatever, but I saw like Dwight Howard took a selfie in the barbershop, and like Kawhi Leonard was behind him, not looking at the camera. And I think that spread just because people like seeing Kawhi Leonard doing normal stuff because they think of him as a robot. But yeah, apparently the barbershop is open. They've like brought in a few different guys from around the country, and they're in the bubble like everybody else, and they're there for the next few months giving haircuts. It's I believe there was an ESPN story. I think maybe Eric Woodyard wrote it. I can't remember. It might have been him. But there was a story, like a whole feature story about the barbers and how they selected them and all of that. Like, this is something the NBA has put significant effort into. I don't think this was their number one priority by any stretch when they were planning the bubble. But I know for players it was a legit thing. They wanted to be able to get their normal kind of haircuts and look the way they do during the season instead of showing up all scraggly.
Yeah, exactly. Because people were making fun of LeBron with his beard because he saw like, there was a lot of gray hairs that were present. I said president. I don't know why I said that, but present for LeBron. But at the same time, this man is 35 years old. So, I mean, I think it's quite normal to start having gray hairs around that time. I mean, they're still young, but not old at the same time. So I feel like that's around the time where most people experience their first or second gray hair. Some people witness it much earlier than that. But besides people being well-groomed now due to the barbershop at the bubble, so like I said, it is July 20th, so that means we are approximately 10 days away from the NBA actually starting or restarting. It's supposed to be the Jazz and the Pelicans and the Clippers and the Lakers. It's supposed to be aired on TNT starting that Thursday. So we have 10 days left. So what are some of your biggest takeaways leading into the restart of the NBA, knowing that it's been over 4 months since the NBA decided to shut down, where all sports shut down at that, as a matter of fact?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be weird. It's going to be different. There are going to be teams that look significantly different than they did the last time we saw them, whether that's because there were players who were hurt at the time, and they're back and they're healthy and they're looking good and they're in better shape, or whether it's because there are certain players that just aren't available. Some of them because of illness, some of them because of injury, others for personal reasons and just deciding they didn't want to be in the bubble. And so in a way, it is a continuation of this season. Like, it is still technically the 2019-20 season, but I think a lot of teams are kind of going into this, seeing this as a new thing, a separate thing. And I think that's kind of how we should treat it too. Like, I don't think we can go into this and just expect that teams are going to pick up right where they left off. That's not really how basketball works. It's not really how life works. You take a few months off and things are going to be different. Not everybody approached the hiatus the same way. Some people lost a ton of weight. Some people probably put on weight. Some people may have had access to a gym in their home. Others didn't touch a basketball for multiple months. So I don't completely know what to expect. And I think, honestly, that's part of what makes this interesting. You said the starts in 10 days, but it's only 2 days before these weird scrimmage games start. And those are going to be kind of like the bubble version of the preseason, right? Except that I believe they're only going to be 10-minute quarters. I don't know what teams' rotations are going to look like, but I'm even interested in watching those just to see how these teams look, how individual players look, if there are any significant changes that these coaching staffs make. I mean, they had months to sit around and go over game film, and coaches tend to be very obsessive about that kind of thing. And they could ask their analytics staff to prepare detailed notes on what worked and what didn't. And unlike in the regular season, you actually have time to sit there and debate and discuss and consider alternatives. And I think in that way, this is more like a normal off season than anything else. I mean, the length of time between the end of the finals and this reopening night in 10 days is like, it's actually a couple days longer. The length of time between the start of the hiatus and this reopening night is actually a couple days longer than the length of time between last year's finals and opening night back in October. So I think it is really going to be a new thing.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I'm glad you brought that up. Those are really good points, especially when you brought up how it's going to look different, especially like taking several months off. I mean, some players, like, for example, Nikola Jokic, I hate to single him out, but he lost a lot of weight since the last time we saw him on television, right? So, I mean, it's going to look extremely different with a lot of these players, and the fact that they're all playing in the same location, so really there's no home court advantage, and there's not going to be any fans or anything like that either. So it's going to be completely different. It'll be like watching players practice at Lifetime Fitness, like those videos you would see Russell Westbrook or James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, some of the biggest stars playing each other at the Lifetime, one of the most advanced Lifetime Fitnesses you'll ever see, I think, which is in New York City, as a matter of fact, where they'll be scrimmaging each other. So it kind of looked like that, but to a larger scale. I mean, I'm just curious to see how it looks, how it's going to turn out. I mean, it obviously won't be the same like you said. And then another thing that's like a lot of NBA fans are questioning themselves is, so this is supposed to be a 3-month thing. So when is the next season supposed to start? Is it, I guess, like, have they even talked about that, or?
I mean, they've talked about it, but we do not have anything resembling kind of a solution here or an official announcement. I think initially the reporting indicated that the NBA was looking at the beginning of December. And the way I saw that seemed to me like maybe that was like a kind of bargaining chip. Like they started there knowing that the NBA PA would push back and say that is too early, that is not enough of a break for the teams that would go deep in the playoffs. And then I think the natural landing point was going to be Christmas. And I think that was where I expected things to go as of a month and a half ago. But now I truly don't know. I mean, just the way that the situation has evolved, just how poorly the United States has handled the pandemic, leaves us at a really weird time for sports. And you can look at all the different ways different leagues and college athletics are trying to handle coming back. And there is no consensus on what you should do other than anybody smart knows you should not have fans in the arena. And if you're talking about, well, the number NBA likes to throw out is like, 40% of our revenue is gate revenue. Are they really going to try to pull off a normal season where teams are traveling from market to market? There are no real restrictions realistically that they can put on players in terms of where they can go when they're not playing. It's not a contained bubble environment. It's going, if they try to pull that off in December, like, I just don't know how that works. I don't know how you can ensure you can actually have a season that looks like a normal one at that point. So I think there are probably various things on the table. Maybe they push it back and they're looking at starting it, I don't know, push it back to February, March. Like I really don't know. And wait and hope that the country can get things under control. Or maybe they have to look at, all right, well, and use the same logic that they use for this bubble. Is just like, the virus is here. We're going to have to essentially live with it from a sports perspective and figure out a way to have some semblance of a season around it. Do you do another bubble? I don't know that the league really wants to do that. I know that this is not a sustainable plan for the long term. It is not as profitable for the NBA as doing a normal season and having fans in the stands, obviously. But something like that is more profitable than doing nothing and just not having games. So I think that is the calculus. It's really complicated. There are a lot of kind of factors at play here. And I think that, as difficult as this bubble was to set up and all of the work that the NBA put in with consulting with public health experts, with negotiating with the players, with all the controversy that's ensued. And frankly, like I'm not at a point where I'm like, oh yeah, they've pulled this off. This is successful. This was a great idea. Like, I still have serious misgivings about what they're trying. And I really hope that nobody gets sick in the bubble and that they're able to pull this off and that it doesn't adversely impact testing capacity in Florida too much. But I think we're already seeing that it does have some impact there. I think it's a worrying scenario. And I think, as difficult as that was, having a normal season, like, that is a bigger problem. That is a harder problem to solve. And I think that is an issue that, honestly, probably people like me have not spent enough time discussing over the last few months because we're so focused on what comes next. But I think the step that the NBA takes after this is the bigger step and the more challenging step.
Exactly. And then another thing, the fact that the bubble's in Florida, Orlando, obviously, to be specific about it, Florida is seeing they've witnessed a huge surge in cases within the past month and a half. It's like, on average, they get at least 10,000 new daily cases a day. And it's just absurd how they've really skyrocketed because they're right behind California now. And they at the rate they're going, they might surpass California or even New York if it continues. And the sad part is, like you said, you got to worry about the players getting sick or not. I mean, if there's any positive, if players are testing positive or something like that, and then if players leave the bubble, that causes concerns with players that are inside the bubble, like going back and forth. I mean, even Stephen A. Smith made a joke about it a week ago on his First Take with Max Kellerman and the rest of those guys about players missing their wives or girlfriends or whatever. Like, they won't be able to perform better on the court because they're not around. I guess he was joking. I don't know if he was 100% about that, but Stephen A. Smith, I guess he did have a point. I mean, and then LeBron just last night or maybe today, I saw a video of him talking about how one of his biggest downfalls being in the bubble is not being able to talk to his mother. I mean, he hasn't physically seen his mother that much at all, or really, he hasn't physically seen her since really the start of the pandemic. And then, I mean, we all know that he's extremely close to his mom, and he said that's been a huge concern for him, especially that she won't be able to go to his games or anything like that because he's going to be inside the bubble. And maybe I don't know how they're issuing protocol. I don't know if friends or family members are allowed. I haven't really seen any information on that. You probably know more than I do in that case. But actually, no, I would say you do know more than I do because since you're the writer for the NBA. But that being said, that I just don't know how these players, not only have they changed physically, but also mentally. Like you said, it's been a hiatus from actually playing. Players have been training on their own. There were videos that they were training on their own. LeBron had a lot of training videos. Russell Westbrook was training on the sand. Harden was training in Arizona. I mean, players have been separate from each other for a while. So to see them come back and not having all of them come back, like you said, is a huge concern. But the fact that sports is back, it's kind of hard to be. It's good to be optimistic about it, but at the same time, it's still concerning because it's not the same at all. It's definitely not the same as it was back in March before, or February, I would say, around the time where they had the All-Star game.
Yeah, and I mean, well, first of all, like, yeah, they can have guests, but not until after the first round of the playoffs. Like, you're talking about nobody really having any kind of connection with their families in terms of like physical space until August, and that's quite a long time. And I think this will be challenging. I think you can believe two somewhat contrary things at the same time. One is like, look at what Steven Adams said today in his Zoom call with reporters, talking about like, listen, we're not that hard done by. We're not in a war zone. We are at a luxury hotel. Everything is really nice. Yeah, sometimes the food is a little dry, but I don't have any complaints here. Like, I think the NBA has taken great pains to not treat these players poorly. I think they are pretty pampered in the scenario that they're in right now, especially compared to the average American. I do think it is a very different lifestyle than what they're used to, though. And I think especially if you're a star player who is used to basically getting whatever they want all the time, like, this is very different. And while NBA players have routine lives, like, I think a lot of these guys, like, when you're playing, you're not in a physical bubble, but you're sort of in a mental bubble, right? Like, you're so focused on the season and getting through every day. And, like, practice, shoot around, game, blah, blah, blah. Like, your days are plotted out. You still, like, you are able to live a somewhat normal, or at least free life. You have a lot of free time and you can do with that what you will. Yes, the road trips suck. They are challenging. You are away from your family. But you just are able to dictate a lot more than you are in Orlando. So it's a big change. NBA players are people too. They are going to miss their families. They're going to miss just their friends and their routines and just the normal everyday lives that they have. This is going to be different. This is going to be an adjustment. I think some guys will go stir crazy. I think there is a reason why mental health has been such a big story. There have been numerous articles about this over the last few months. One of my friends in Toronto, where I'm from, Katie Heindel, just wrote a big feature about how the NBA is approaching mental health in Orlando. Teams have brought mental health professionals with them. The NBA has a mental health professional on site, on campus, that can talk to players about what they're going through. And I think the NBA has done the best it can, but it is still, honestly, it's pretty weird. And as a reporter, like, I'm not in the bubble, but I know, like, the reporters who are there. And I got to say, like, there is appeal in being at a once in a lifetime event and being able to cover it and tell the story and also kind of experience it, right? That's why all the reporters there have been writing these first person pieces about life in the bubble. But just knowing that that's what your life is like until October, you can't leave. Like, I'm not sitting here like super jealous of the people that are there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why like we did mention a few reporters that are already there. For, like, one in particular that we talked about before recording this is that he has the personality for it, right? So when you see somebody like that, but again, everybody's personality is different, and it's a blessing for him that he's able to adjust and something like that. And it's just like the fact that this is until October. I mean, it's July right now. I guess some people can only go so long being in a situation like that. So we'll find out what happens. I guess we'll just have to take it one day at a time once it starts, and then
let me shout out Ben Golliver if you're gonna bring him up. Like,
go ahead.
That's my guy. He's in the bubble and he is Instagramming like crazy, like he always does. I am happy he has his freedom. His quarantine is over, so he can still go on walks, like, within the campus. At least he can see other people who aren't the people dropping by his door every day, arriving with their coronavirus test to administer. So I'm very happy for him. And I was a little concerned, to be honest, when he was doing like 12,000 steps a day in his hotel room, just pacing back and forth like a crazy person and posting the videos. So yeah, I think he is somebody who, like, just knowing him, I think he has a personality that, like, he's going to get through this just fine. But I don't know that I have the personality for that. I think I might kind of lose it. So it's a weird one. And I think that same thing is going to be the case. Like, NBA players are not a monolith, and NBA players have vastly different life experiences, and they have vastly different home lives. And I think even if we're talking about, like, from a safety perspective, right? Because the NBA's argument has been, this is one of the safest places in America. Like, there's basically no way that if you're in the bubble, you're not safer than you would have been had you just been in your home market, at least if you were one of the players that lives in the United States, which not everybody does. But I think that argument is broadly true, but I don't think it is specifically true for every player, because some players are more concerned about the pandemic and more responsible about how they're handling it than others, and will take fewer risks than others. If you're just basically self-isolating, and that's what you've been doing for the past few months, and now you're in a situation where your health is dependent on the NBA's health protocols holding up, and it is in some ways dependent on your peers behaving responsibly, then you're not necessarily safer. Like, you're out here playing a contact sport where nobody's wearing masks and people are obviously breathing on each other and in very close proximity. And who knows what other team mandated activities you'll do where maybe some of your teammates are not taking the proper precautions. Like, I don't think it is the case that every single person there is going to be safer than they would have been had they been at home. And I would say I don't think it is a case that every person there is going to be as comfortable in this environment than the next guy, or the player in the neighboring room in the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing. It's like you look at some of the biggest stars that are in the bubble right now, and you talk about how it's how it's completely different than things used to be. And like you said, this is just one. I mean, this is a once in. It's obvious that this. I hope I don't jinx this, but let's just say I'm going to say it anyway. This is a once in a lifetime deal where we're dealing with a pandemic that's affecting like everybody all over the world. Something at this magnitude, right? I hope I'm correct about this, because I would hate to see another pandemic roll around within the next 30 or 40 years. Knock on wood, right? So I just knocked on wood just now, just to save everybody.
If you want to be really scared, read the article in the Atlantic from last week by Ed Yong about how America should be preparing for a dual pandemic, as in, if you are focused on stopping one, it could make it likely that another pandemic breaks out, and then you are trying to put out two fires at once, and then both are worse than they would have been otherwise. So if you want to be really freaked out, just give that a read. It's a really good story, but it's frankly terrifying.
Yeah, I might. You know what? Since you brought it up, I might as well. I'm gonna keep that in mind. Definitely check it out to see how it's just out of curiosity, right? It is scary, but it's out of curiosity. I just wanted to see what he has to say. But I mean, but the good news is, like, I mean, with COVID, at least it's not as bad as something like, Ebola, right? If it had a fatality rate that was at that extent, then we all be in some trouble. I think the whole world would be shut down for a long time if that was the case. But luckily, it's not there, and knock on wood for that again. I feel like I'm jinxing something, but we'll just go ahead and move on, right?
Yeah.
But next up,
this got dark real quick.
Yeah. Okay. gotta bring out that light again. Hopefully, it's kind of like I guess this might be a terrible analogy, but say like it's like playing Luigi's Mansion, right, where he's like stuck in that haunted house, and then there's nothing but ghosts, and then he has to have that candlelight on. So maybe we're in a situation like that right now, where we have to get that candlelight, and the next thing you know, it just spreads everywhere else. Let's hope.
Yeah. That's a great. I love that game, actually. My wife's playing Animal Crossing right now. I can like peek over at the TV and see her playing. But since Animal Crossing came out, I have not touched the new Luigi's Mansion, but I was like making my way through that game before Animal Crossing New Horizons came out.
Oh, there you go. So we got something in common right there. That's Luigi's Mansion. That's a good game. I agree with that. That's why I brought it up in the first place. But hey, maybe some of these players are playing that right now. I mean, they have a lot of free time, right? So maybe they're playing a lot of video games. I mean, we saw just yesterday there was a few players that were, they always like stream everything on Twitch, and they were getting roasted on playing Call of Duty. I mean, that's bound to happen. If you're playing Call of Duty online, you're going to run into a lot of trolls, whether you're a big-time name, like whether you're somebody like Paul George or just a average Joe, you're always going to come across a lot of trolls on there because, everybody's behind the microphone and not around anybody, so anybody can say anything. So
yeah. I need to know, because everybody plays Call of Duty, everybody plays 2K. I need to know who my, Switch players are in the NBA. I want to know who's got their Animal Crossing character, who has the best island. I don't even know. How many Switches have you even seen on people? I know Grant Williams has one. I can't remember. I'm sure some people have them.
I'm pretty sure Devin Booker might have one because he's a big time gamer for sure. But like I'm pretty sure more the younger side, like Trae Young, Devin Booker, even Luka Doncic, some of the younger players, I'm pretty sure they might have every system. I mean, they have the money for it.
Yeah, but some of it is like the vibe though, because like playing Call of Duty online or playing NBA 2K, like that is within the culture of NBA basketball. It's also an extremely competitive thing that guys like to do. I want to know who's just like chilling out in their room playing Animal Crossing,
or maybe Super Smash Brothers,
or Zelda or something. They're I don't know, like they're not testing for drugs in the they're testing for hard drugs, but they're not testing for marijuana in the bubble. So I wonder who's just like sitting there like stoned and zoned out and just working on their Animal Crossing island. This is the information I'm personally curious about.
Oh, that's funny. So like, what if what if it gets out of hand? So what if some of these players, say they smoke, say they get high, since they're so bored, they get high like 5 times a day. Then how are they going to?
Well, this is I'm just full of article recommendations today. So I'll say Marcus Thompson from The Athletic last week wrote like a huge story on weed in the bubble. He interviewed Al Harrington, who I have interviewed for a story in the past about, like, he has like a CBD business as well as like a cannabis business. And I mean, Marcus talked to a few people, not just Harrington in the story, but I thought it was really good. And there's like funny quotes from agents where like basically they've had to talk to players about like basically how much to bring and like how to deal with this. And it's a little bit tricky because it's not technically legalized in Florida, but I believe it's a little complicated because like CBD is, and there's it's not really being enforced so much. So I don't think it has been particularly difficult for people to bring it in. But I think just kind of that it was one of those issues. I mean, honestly, kind of like the Stephen A. Smith comment that you brought up, like these are both things that like had not been broadly discussed in public over the last couple of months, but like privately, these have absolutely been enormous topics of conversation around the league.
Oh, exactly. And then I noticed that a lot of time has passed in this podcast. We're having a great time, but I'm pretty sure you're on a time crunch right now. So do you have any last-minute thoughts that you like to express about the restart of the NBA or anything going on in the bubble as of now?
I mean, I don't know, like, like broadly, I'm not as excited about this as I would be for like the beginning of a normal NBA season. Like, I don't think we can just very easily ignore the world around us and just have our normal experience of enjoying sports without any caveats right now. But at the same time, like, while I'm worried about everything to do with this, and while I hope that they can avoid any sort of outbreak or any kind of disaster, like, I'm also just I'm able to, like, if you want to talk about basketball and who might contend and who will play and whatever, like I can get in that mind frame. I can get there. And I think there are a lot of things, there are a lot of storylines that will be interesting to follow, even if they don't feel super important right now because of the world we're living in. Like, I think there are so many teams we could zoom in on, and whether it's their prospects in the bubble, like what might be different from where they were before, what we're kind of looking out for. Like, I think there'll be no shortage of things to talk about when it comes to the NBA season. And like, it just so happens that like in like my own life, I have spent probably more time talking about like the testing situation in Florida and how the NBA fits into that. But I mean, in 10 days, I know I'm just going to be watching like 4 or 5 basketball games a day because it's going to come fast. Once it starts, it's going to be insane. It's going to be really hard to keep up with what's going on. Every day is going to be essentially like a summer league schedule. So I think it's basically going to go from everybody is having these basketball withdrawals to like everybody being like, I don't even know how to deal with all this basketball. And that is coming up sooner than we realize. Like, in a couple of days, we're going to have these scrimmages, and then a week later, we're going to have basketball again. It's like, it seems like all indications are they're actually going to get this thing started.
Well said right there. Well said. I mean, so that's right. So for you listeners out there, if you listen to James Herbert, because he's an expert when it comes to the NBA. So whenever the NBA does start, you better be ready. You better have it down on your schedule, because I know it's been a long time since we actually saw any sports like this exciting going on. So definitely be on the lookout. It is July 20th, so 10 days from now it'll be official. Summer League starts in a couple of days, just like he said. And for those out there that are listening who are actually intrigued about James Herbert and what he has to offer, and if you're intrigued about his work, check him out on Twitter. It is at Outside the NBA, all one word. Outside the NBA is his username. Like I said, he's an NBA writer for CBS Sports, so definitely check out his work, man. It's always good to see stuff like that. He's always putting out content pretty fast, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And James, just wanted to say thank you very much for joining my podcast, man. I'm glad that I'm really honored to have you on here, and the fact that you took time out of your day for this, man, it means a lot to me.
Oh, no problem. Well, I'm actually just before the season starts, like I'm off this week, so like I did not have to clear space on my completely empty schedule to do this. I think I'll have a story dropping this week that I'd completed before the week started. But yeah, I am checked out this week, so this was very easy.
Well, I guess I consider myself lucky that I caught you at the right time. How about that?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.